day. Today we're going to be looking at creating some basic modified objects in AutoCAD 2015. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a doghouse. You can see that I actually opened up a drawing of the doghouse previously, and utilize that to help us create not only an architectural shape to help you understand the differences between mechanical shapes and architectural shapes, but also to talk about some of the dimensioning challenges that you do have along with it. So you'll notice that this particular doghouse will be located on the right hand side of our drawing screen, so you'll be able to refer to it as you watch the video and create the drawing. So to begin, we're going to go through the setup process pretty quickly. We're going to go ahead and choose Start Drawing. And a couple of things that I'm going to change. I'm going to make sure that my grid is turned on, which it is, and I'm going to turn the grid off here. It just makes it a little bit easier for everybody to see. I did a couple of videos with the grid on. Not real pleased with the results of being able to see all the details, so I decided this time we're turning the grid off. Second thing that we're going to do is units. So we're going to come over here to Drawing Utilities, set our units up. And so this one is actually going to be an architecture, and a precision of a 1/16 of an inch is probably accurate enough for what we need to work in for this particular doghouse. We're going to continue with decimal degrees on our setup also. Coming back to the bottom area here, we're going to go ahead and turn on polar tracking. And we can hit the down arrow just to the right of that and choose tracking settings, and we can see all of the polar tracking options. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and use a polar tracking option. Looking at the drawing, we're going to have roughly a 45-degree angle. So if we choose 15 degrees, we'll be able to intersect that 45-degree angle. We could also use 5 degrees, which is the standard one that I typically use, but this one we're going to change it up just a bit. Object snap, we're going to use our standard object snap settings for this drawing: endpoint, midpoint, center, intersection, extension, and perpendicular. Lastly, we're going to set up our layers. So we're going to click Layer Properties. We're going to create an object. Actually, let's create walls. So we're going to call it Walls and Roof. We're going to call another one Dimension, and a third one Center Lines. And so Walls and Roof, we're going to go with the slightly brownish color. We're going to go with a green color for, wrong one. Dimensions are typically blue, and then green, a greenish color for the center lines. Notice that I'm picking darker colors for the white background to show up. If you pick yellow, it's really hard to see. And if you do a PDF output of your drawing, it's extremely difficult to see. So we're going to change that color. We also need to change the center line layer line type to center line. And so we're going to find center. And the reason why I'm not going to use X2 or twice the size is because the actual scale of that line needs to be much bigger than just 2 times for it to show up on our screen. So we'll show you how to control that here in just a few minutes, but we're going to choose the standard center line. Walls and Roof, we're going to change the line weight to 0.5, which is our standard object line or exterior line line weight. And again, that corresponds to pencil lead diameters. Now we also have other setup items: text style, dimension style, and layouts. Those are the other 3 setup items that we haven't covered yet, and we are going to get to dimension style a little bit later in this video. So let's get drawing. The first thing we need to do is draw a center line, because center lines are the center of the universe for when we create objects. We're going to create a vertical center line here. And you'll notice that our drawing is roughly going to be about figure a total of 20 feet from start to finish. So I'm going to need to draw a line vertically 20 feet. So I'm actually typing in 20 with a foot sign because the center line needs to be that long. If you figure that well, actually we could probably do it 15 feet and be happy. We'll do it 15 feet instead. So again, just backspace and you can reset it. But notice that you have to put the single quote in for feet. If not, it'll think that it's in 15 inches, which is still a large amount, but not near the size that we need. So there's our line. The problem is that this line is gigantic and I can't get to the end. And notice that little icon with the little hand? That's my pan icon that says that I can't pan anymore, bringing it down. That says stop. So what I'm going to have to do is either double click on the wheel of my mouse to do a zoom extents, or come over here to the zoom extents and choose the zoom extents button. One or the other. I'm going to double click the wheel really fast. Click, click. And that is my center line. Notice that I can't tell that it's a center line anymore because the magnification is so far out. Remember, this thing's 15 feet long, true size. So I can't see the little dashes anymore. So we have to use a command called line type scale. There are several commands that you have to type, and this is one of them. The command is LTSCALE, or line type scale. And so that line type scale command allows us to set a scale factor for our line type. Now we could do this individually for every line, independently of each other, but this sets the scale for all the lines. So if we have a hidden line, if we have a center line, if we have a phantom line, these are scaled appropriately. So what should the scale factor be? Well, it gets back to what the plot scaling of an architectural drawing happens to be. If you think about it, many of the architectural drawings are 1/4 inch equals a foot. And the 1/4 inch equals a foot equals 48. So if you divide a 1/4 inch equal into a foot, a lot of people come up and say, oh yeah, it's 4. No, it's actually 48. So it's 48 times our setting that we currently have. But what we have found is that if you use half that value, or 24, the scaling factor looks much better. So if we were to plot this at a 1/4 inch equals a foot, then we'd want to use a line type scale factor of 24. That would be half of that 48 value. And notice that we don't have many breaks. Alright, well, it's only a 15-foot line. So maybe if we change the line type scale from 24 to 12. So now if it was a 12, that looks much better with the number of breaks, but let's work it backwards. So if a 1/4 inch equals a foot is 48, and half of that is 24, and we just did half of that 24, then we would actually be working at 1/2 inch equals 1 foot, which would equal 24, and divide that by 2, which would be 12. So in essence, our plotting scale will be a 1/2 inch equals a foot, which is what our line type is based at. Hopefully that makes sense with that mathematics. So now we're going to draw the doghouse. And we're going to start with the upper lines of the doghouse and work from there. And so the opening of the doghouse is 2 feet. It's a 4-foot wide doghouse. And so what we're going to do is draw, we need to switch from Centerline to walls and roof. We're going to draw the top of the doghouse. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. And right now it's going to give me the midpoint here. And the midpoint could work out pretty well. We're going to draw a distance of 2 feet. Again, if I point and shoot, I have to put the foot sign in, because 2 feet is the distance of the house itself. Now this particular doghouse goes 5 foot 6 inches back, so 5 foot 6 inches. Now, do I have to put the inch sign in? No. It's a good habit to have, but it's not required. If you're looking at speed, you can eliminate the you can eliminate the inches next to the 6, which is a little bit faster. So it's 5 foot 6 inches up. And we'll have the same thing on the other side. But since this particular project is about modification and not about basic drawing, what we're going to do is mirror one side to the other. So there's a command called mirror, which is a modify command, and we're going to mirror these two objects. So one of the nice things is that it now pops up and shows us what we're selecting. When we're done selecting objects, we always right mouse click, and we have to pick the mirror line, and the mirror line is going to be our center line. So we'll pick a point on the center line and a point on the center line, and it's going to ask us, do we want to delete the source or the original objects? No, we don't want to get rid of those, so we'll keep those. So we just mirrored the two objects. How neat is that? So the mirror command works just like the modify tools such as rotate or copy or move. Same process occurs for each one of those. So now we need to create an arc across the top. So we'll draw an arc, and we can use start end direction. We'll use start end radius this time because we're going to pick the starting point of the arc, the ending point of the arc, and it didn't go the right direction. Doesn't that always happen, that you always pick the wrong direction? So we'll hit escape. So if we pick start end radius and we pick the start point and the end point, and this time we're going to go ahead and pick the arc, but that arc doesn't look very, it looks kind of weak on the tangential component of the arc. So if the arc doesn't work out, we can always use start end direction. That I know will work. We could also use start center end if we knew where the center point is, or we could use start end angle. But if we were going to use start end direction, this one I know will work and accomplish our task. And you'll notice the difference in the arc itself. The other arc was kind of like down here. We needed it to be fully tangent to the shape, which is right there. Okay, here's the deal. I need to extend the center line up just a little bit. Make sure it's at 90 degrees. If you do any of these editing moves with grips, make sure you do it at 90 degrees. So you pick the object, pick the endpoint that you're going to stretch, and then make sure it's at 90 degrees. And hit the escape key to get out. So far, so good. All right. So we've got an opening here in the front that's 2 foot wide. Right now, we basically have a closed house. Let's do the walls first, and then we'll do the opening. So to create the walls that are 3.5 inches thick, because we're actually doing a serious doghouse here, the one that will protect the dog through anything. 3.5 inches. Isn't that 3.5 also? Absolutely. So even though it's an architecture, I can type in decimal-based drawing units. So 3.5 inches is 3.5 inches. Hit the enter key, and it will offset, or I can pick to offset these entities, including the arc, 3.5 inches in. So now, remember I said that we have to create the 2 foot opening. And the easy way to create the 2 foot opening is to offset 1 foot, or we could type in 12 inches, same thing. No, remember I don't have to put the inch sign if I just type in 12. I can offset 12 inches to each side the center line. Well, that becomes our guide to draw our opening lines. So now there's 2 ways to get rid of or create the doorway here. I can either grip and stretch the lines back, or I can choose trim. And the preferred method is choosing trim. If we use the trim command, I first pick the objects that are going to be my cutting edges. Well, one side of the doorway, the other side of the doorway are my cutting edges because I want to cut the doorway open. Again, when you see select objects, when you're finished selecting things, right mouse click. Then select the objects that you would like to get rid of, which in this case are the segments for the doorway. So far so good, except that we've got these squares in the corner for when we offset. And there's a really fast way to fix these, and it's through the fillet command. And you see that fillets or chamfers, either way, fillets created round edges, chamfers create diagonal edges. Well, that only works if you actually put a fillet radius in. Right now the radius is 0. Well, the 0 radius is a sharp corner. And the same with the chamfer. Right now the chamfer distances are 0, which will produce a sharp corner. So if I pick fillet and pick a surface that I want to keep, and I want to pick the surface that I want to keep, and you can see what's happening here is that it shows me what's going to get grayed out there towards the bottom are those two little lines. And it cleans up the corner. Just to prove it to you, I'm going to choose chamfer on the next one and do the exact same thing. I'll pick it in the opposite direction. So we pick the line where I want to keep it, pick the line where I want to keep it. Notice how it shows me the blue lines, which are going to be what my final drawing is, and it trims it up. So as long as the values are 0, you're okay. Everything works well. Well, that's the top half of the doghouse. The bottom half, or the front view of the doghouse, begins down here. So to change that, or to create the bottom half of the doghouse, we'll need to project the doghouse down. And so we take the corner, highlight it, don't left mouse click, just highlight it, and notice that we get an extension line. Remember that object snap called extension? That's what we're using here. So we're going to go ahead and pick a point down here. And how wide is our doghouse? Well, we don't really have to know. We could project down again. And so the intersection point of that projection along with the 0, notice that polar is 0, extension is 270. That means it's going to be a straight line. Vertically, I have a 5-foot total height house in the middle. But I don't know the side distances. So we're going to have to figure that out here through some geometry to create it. And so to do that, I can create a box that's 5 foot. So I'm going to go ahead and draw 5 feet straight up. Come how far over? 4 feet. So I'm going to go ahead, instead of projection, I'm going to go ahead and just type it in. 4 feet over. And it better line up. Better line up and produce a nice little rectangle for us here. And to stop the line, I'm going to choose enter. So now the roof is 45 degrees. But the roof actually extends over a little bit beyond the edge of the doghouse itself. And so what we're going to be able to do is, if we draw 45 degrees, we'll find the intersection point. So if I pick the starting point, which we know is this top corner here, the center line and the intersection of the 5 foot, and I'm going to draw a line at 45 degrees. Well, what's 45 degrees? Well, remember we lock it in at 15-degree increments. So I can come down and you can see that I am right at 45 degrees here. 41. There I am, 45 degrees. And it's 315 degrees, which is 360 minus 45. So that's my 45 degree line. So I'll just draw an extra long line here. We'll draw the same line on the other side. So we'll pick the line command and we'll draw a 45 degree angle. It says 135 degrees. That's okay too. 225 plus 45 is 270. Okay, so that gets us the distance or the angle that we want to work with. And again, we're going to make this extra long, longer than we actually need. So that's the roof of the house. So from here, we're going to need to trim this up a little bit and start doing our detailing. So we're going to go ahead and trim. We'll use the roof of the house as our cutting edges. Right mouse click, and we'll trim the vertical lines. Now I can trim the horizontal line, but it won't allow me to trim the other line because it would basically erase it. So Since it doesn't fully intersect, it won't allow me to trim that last line. I'm going to need to right mouse click, choose enter, grip it, and choose erase, and erase that segment. So if you try to use the trim command and it doesn't work, many times you might just have to erase that one segment. So again, we've got the doorway, and so we're going to go ahead and draw a line projecting down. So the doorway starts here on this side and it comes up 2 feet. And we'll draw a line from the other side, project it down first, bring this one up, and we'll type in 24 inches. Again, same distance. Now we have another arc on the top. So another way to draw an arc is to create a circle. And we have a tool called 2-point circles. And so a 2-point circle will allow us to create a circle from one endpoint to the other endpoint. And that makes a tangent. And then I can use the trim command using the cutting edges of the sides of the opening. Right mouse click because it says select objects, and trim away that opening. Okay, so now we've got a fascia board that we need to trim, and we need to offset our house to get the drip edge or the overhang set up properly. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and use the offset command. 3.5 inches is our offset. We're going to offset for the fascia here. So the fascia board is now offset, and we will offset again, this time 6 inches, and this is going to be for the overhang. And that's basically a good practice to have for drip edges. But now we've got a whole bunch of messiness that we need to clean up with the trim command. So using the trim command again, we'll pick trim, cutting edges, that's going to be a cutting edge, this will be a cutting edge, this will be a cutting edge, and that will be a cutting edge. So the vertical will cut these lines, this one will cut this line, those will cut up there. So we can select multiple cutting edges, right mouse click, and we'll trim this line, we'll trim this line, we'll trim this line. Can't trim this line because I forgot to select the upper one. I can trim these two, trim the bottom. Uh-oh, that one didn't touch. I can trim this one. So here's the deal. This one didn't extend far enough. So what do I have to do? Well, under trim there is an extend command. So the extend command is the opposite of trim. Here I pick a boundary edge. So this is the line that I need this diagonal line to extend to. Again, boundary edge, pick it, right mouse click, and then I can extend that line to the vertical. Lastly, I need to go back and choose the trim tool, pick these lines again, all 4 of them, right mouse click, and then trim these up. Get rid of the vertical line inside there and there. Wow, that's looking very doghouse-like. So at this point, the doghouse itself is pretty well structured and created. Now we might need to move this up a little bit, and so to use the move command, we'll take and grab move. And there's 2 types of windows. There's the blue window and there's the green window. The blue window only picks objects that are fully inside. So if I were to select the doghouse in this way, the center line would not get selected for the move. So let's try that. So there's the blue selection window. Alright, it picked it all. Let's try the same command, but this time with the green selection window. So we're going to pick move. And this time, opposite corner, again, the green selection window goes from right to left. The other one goes from left to right. So green selection window, notice that the center line gets selected. And that's called a crossing window. And so if there's anything that crosses the window or is inside of the window, it selects it. If we're just inside the window with the blue window, just our house moves. So we are done selecting our objects that we're going to move. We now have to hit the right mouse button. Now the base point is the point of reference of movement. In this case, I'm going to pick the top of the roof and I'm going to move it up 6 inches. So I'm going to pick the top of the roof, which I did, left mouse click, and I'm just going to point in the direction going straight up, making sure that my angle is 90. I'm going to type in 6. Hit the enter key. I just shifted the whole house up 6 inches. So now it's dimension time. So now we need to start putting dimensions on our drawing. So we'll choose our dimension layer, and annotation is where our dimensions are located, and we'll pick linear. And there's a variety of different dimensions that we're going to use here today. We'll use radius and linear and angular. So we're going to choose linear first. So I'm going to do the overall dimension from the top of the roof to the bottom of the house and pick it. Uh-oh. It says 60. That's not 5 foot. Well, it is 5 foot. It's 60 inches is 5 foot, but it's not in feet and inches, and it's way too small. So do you remember me mentioning that part of our setup process is to look at text style and dimension styles also? So not only do we have to do the units, polar, object snap, and layers, but dimension styles, which is found under the annotation tab right here. That's our dimension style button. And we're going to go ahead and set up a dimension style. So right now we've got a very standard dimension style, and I need to modify it. That modified dimension style will bring me in to this particular screen. Now we're not going to go through all the details. There's another video on dimension styles that gets into a lot more details. But we're first going to start under primary units because I need to change from decimal to architectural. 1/16 of an inch is still good. The only other spot that I really need to change right now is under fit. Under the fit area, I can scale my dimensions. What was that value we used? Yeah, it was 12. Remember the line type scale that we calculated out for printing? Well, the same value works for dimension scaling. So we'll choose 12 as our dimension scale and choose OK. And choose OK again. Bingo! Look what happened to our 60 inches. Our 60 turned into 5 foot. Arrowheads, everything looks very appropriate now. So now we can go ahead and continue with the linear dimensions. And this is 4 foot. And our opening here is 2 foot. I can right mouse click. And notice what I'm doing here is I pick the endpoint, and I'm going to pick the point for the third point right next to the 2 foot dimension, the arrowhead, the dimension line arrowhead. And what that does is that guarantees that these two are lined up, which is really important when you're dimensioning, to have dimensions that are lined up. We also have a radius dimension that we need to put on here, which is the outer radius, which is 2 feet. And a linear dimension. We'll put that on this side from here to the center point, which is 5'6". The other thing that I need to do is make sure that I dimension linear midpoint to midpoint, or midpoint to perpendicular, so I get the width of the walls, which are 3.5 inches. And I'll need to do the same thing down here. We know that this opening is 2 foot. We don't know what the height is, so I'm going to need to get the height from the center to the edge. And I'm going to do all my roof dimensions over here on the left-hand side this time. So 2 dimensions that I need. I'm going to need to do an align dimension. An align dimension will give me, and I'll work from the midpoint outward, because I need to get 3.5 inches to show what the fascia width is. I'll also need to dimension the overhang distance. I may try to do that here. And if I do that, I'm going to need to move this one up so it offsets above that point. And this one, let's see, I'm not real happy with this dimension, the way it's looking. So if I grip that, I'll need to move this one up to here. Much better. Notice what I did is I gripped this and I moved the extension line locations up to the ends of the line. What that allows us to do is put a little gap in here, and it makes our dimensions look so much nicer. We'll also need to do a angular dimension. And this angular dimension is going to be from the top line to the vertical, and we'll have a 45-degree angle between those lines. Center line shows the center of the object. Got the radius, 2 foot, 3.5 inches, 5'6", got that. Everything looks really good for our dimensions and our dimension scale. So one last thing I wanted to show you is the copy command. And again, it's a basic modification command. The copy command works just like the move command, except it makes a copy of the object. So we can choose copy. We can window, in this case we'll select everything. Right mouse click after selecting objects, pick our base point. And again, I can point and shoot. So the objects will be a set distance as I project. Right now they're about 15 feet away from the other object. But you can get the idea of how the copy command can work. The last command I wanted to show you is called stretch. So let's say, for example, our dog grows, and we need to stretch the building, and we need to make the building longer. So 5'6" needs to turn into 8 feet. All right, it's a huge dog. But the idea is that we can stretch this building. So again, we're going to choose the modification tool called stretch. We're going to do a crossing window. The stretch only works with the green window. And notice that what I'm doing is I'm cutting the dimension. So I'm connecting one of the dimension extension lines, but I'm cutting through the dimension line where the arrowhead is. And what this will allow us to do is stretch the object where that horizontal line, or the horizontal part of the green box, is cutting through the object. So we're going to go from 5'6" to 8 foot. Well, that's 2 foot 6 inches. So I'm going to select this. Again, when I'm done selecting objects, I right mouse click. My base point of movement is going to be right here along the center line, and I'm going to move it straight up. And we need to go 2 foot 6 inches and hit enter. Did you notice what happened is that it automatically updated the dimension since we stretched the dimension with it, but the 2 foot radius didn't move because it was fully inside the green box. So we just stretched our doghouse and made it longer. Pretty amazing. Well, have a great day, and we look forward to seeing you soon.